Hi, I'm Wade from Thoroughbred Diesel. This is Mike Cunningham with ARP Fasteners, and today we're going to be showing you the proper way to install head studs on your diesel engine. Today, I had to call in reinforcements. This is my good friend Mike Cunningham with ARP Fasteners. Mike has been our sales rep for ARP for, I guess, since we've been selling ARP for a long time. And I'm honored to call him one of my friends. I always learn something from Mike in our conversations. Mike has been in the automotive industry for what? 50 years. 50 years. It's a long time. Man. It's a long time.
I had hair when I started.
That's it. That's it. Mine was probably brown back then. Right. So, you know, again, I always learn something from Mike. Even when we came in this morning, we were just chit-chatting, catching up on life. I wound up learning 2 or 3 things from him about stuff that I do on an everyday basis that I maybe necessarily wasn't doing 100% correct. And that's the basis of this video. You know, we always talk about proper way to install head studs, and you know, a lot of it is it's just talk. We don't get the opportunity to have an engine out of the truck and be doing a build and just talk about the basics of some of the stuff that you do and you should do when you're installing head studs on an engine. So let's talk about the project. This is an LLY motor. A lot of you guys have seen this. We've talked about it quite a bit. One of our warehouse guys just bought this truck, had about 3,000 miles on it, broke a crank. I reached out to Mike as soon as we started this build, and I told him that we wanted to do ARP fasteners all over the motor. ARP was gracious enough to send us just about everything we've needed here. This motor is going into a good cause for sure. I think Mike knew that, and Mike's been over and met all of our guys, so they stepped up, and we're going to go ahead and install a set of ARP2000 head studs in this motor, in this Duramax motor. So
yeah, and a lot of the things we're going to talk about apply to the other engine platforms as well. So it's not just specific to Duramax.
That's right. Yeah. Some of the fine points that we'll go over inside of this is stuff for you all to watch out on the Cummins blocks, as well as the power strokes and stuff too. So I guess let's get into the nitty gritty. Let's talk part numbers here real quick. Chevrolet Duramax head stud kits is a 230-4201 at the time of this filming. This is the ARP 2000s. Let's talk about 2000s for just a second here, Mike, before we get started. The 2000s, you know, a lot of people ask us, should I do 2000s or should I do the 625?
Custom made 625.
Right, exactly. Difference in materials. Tell us what your thoughts are on what the everyday user needs to use as his guidelines for choosing between the two products.
Thank you. In the most common applications, whether it's an automotive or a diesel engine, ARP 2000 works wonderful. When you start upping the cylinder pressure, so when any of your guys are putting bigger turbos on or all that, the ARP 2000 is still good up to say 70. Some guys are even at 100 pounds of boost are still using ARP 2000s. When you're in that range, you got to be very careful. It's about the tune-up,
right? Because
the studs are just like springs.
Exactly.
You know, they're designed to clamp and hold a clamp load. Well, if there's extreme cylinder pressure pushing back up, it stretches the stud.
Yeah.
If there's too much cylinder pressure, the spring doesn't go back.
Okay.
And so that's what I say. This is ARP 2000s. They've got a tensile strength of 220,000 PSI. The 625 will go 260 to 280. Okay. The custom-made 625s, making that decision is if you're going to make the change at some point in the future, it's almost easier to put the 625s on earlier.
Yeah.
Instead of later on, because then you're taking it all apart again.
Yes, grow into the 625s.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
No, good, that's great.
I think another question that everybody wants to ask on this topic is ARP 2000s, can I reuse them? If I have to go back in and if I have to do some more work on the engine, hopefully that you don't. If you do, can they be reused?
So I get that question a lot, and our answer is you can reuse head studs, our head studs, many, many times, as long as there isn't some catastrophic failure. Extreme racing, where it's really high-end professional, they'll actually measure every stud, and then when they're doing a rebuild, they may take the stud out and measure it to make sure something hasn't stretched.
Yes.
But in most applications like this LLY, you can use them over and over and over again.
Yeah. So if you're going to reuse them, check and stretch on them is critical.
Yeah, you just make sure that there's no deformation or anything has happened to the stud.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, another product that we're going to feature inside of this is something a lot of people don't know that ARP carries is thread chasers. When you're installing head studs into a block, regardless of the engine, you want to chase every hole and make sure that you've got it clear of debris. That's for making sure that the stud makes it to the proper depth inside the block, as well as helps with your to be able to apply the correct torque to each stud.
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
And even though these look like a tap, these are not a tap. They don't cut threads.
Yeah.
They will actually clean the threads going down.
That's another thing I learned today. Did not know that. I thought these were all actual taps, but they are cleaners. They don't cut material. They just clean the holes up for the fastener. Lubricant, ARP, really proud of their assembly lube. This is their ARP Ultra Torque fastener. They've really tested this to be able to apply correct torques to their fasteners. A lot of really big scientific words that they use inside of this.
Yep.
Here, what it comes down to is you have to use this to be able to apply correct torque.
Yep. And what's interesting about it is that unlike a lot of lubrication that's used on fasteners, this you can actually get within plus or minus 5% of the target clamp load in one torque.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, it's awesome. All right, we're going to move the studs off the motor, and we're going to talk on one more point that Mike was wanting us to reference inside of this, and that is bolts versus studs. One of the things that we really don't like to reuse head studs in these motors. You never want to reuse a head bolt in these motors, is because they're torque to yield.
Yeah, they're torque to yield, and that means they're only designed for one use.
One use. That's it.
You know, the word yield in our world and in your world, all of it, yield is a bad word.
Yep.
Things have given up.
Yep.
Well, they do this financially.
Yeah.
Because they can just do it quickly and inexpensively, and it's there.
Yes.
But we see people all the time trying to reuse them, and they're having problems with it. And even the dampener bolts are torque to yield.
Exactly.
And that creates a problem for them. So yeah, it's.
That's an excellent point on this Duramax motor. This 36 metric, the harmonic balancer bolt on this is torque to yield. That's disposable. ARP has a harmonic balancer bolt to replace that. We have used ARPs on the mains inside of this motor. There's a video that we'll link you to inside of this for our main stud installation. And as well, this has ARP 2000 rod bolts on waggler rods, waggler crank inside of this motor. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our installation here. And first thing that I just want to talk about is deck prep on these motors. Obviously, this motor's been set out for machine shop. This deck has come back. Run out on this is correct. You still want to do a little bit of deck prep here. Just make sure that the deck of the engine is clean, it is dry, it is free of any type of debris. You know, a whiz wheel, a roll-off whiz wheel that will not remove material to clean up any kind of debris that's on the block is definitely what we suggest. Make sure that your cylinders are free of any debris as well. And let's go ahead and talk about cleaning up the holes. So we're going to go ahead and bring our ARP thread chaser out for this, and we're just going to do one hole here. The motor is already prepped and done, but we wanted to talk about the process, and then Mike and I have got a side bet on this. We left one hole in this motor that we have not cleaned, and I'm betting that we're going to come out of this hole with debris. Mike says we're not going to. We won't get that lucky, so we'll see what we got. This is our only hole that we've got left. I want to talk to you just a little bit about this. When you're using these thread chasers, I like to use a little bit of cutting oil, although we're not cutting. It's just always a good idea to use it. And when you're cycling a tap or a thread chaser, you want to make sure that you give it a few turns in and then back it off a couple of turns. That's cleaning out that thread and make sure. I think we're going to have a good one here. I'm going to shut up so you can kind of hear this. I don't know if you're able to hear that or not.
Yeah, it's definitely making noise going down in.
Yeah, I think we got debris in there, so we're going to go ahead.
And this is after you have cleaned these holes, blown them out with air.
Yes.
There's still debris that'll be caught in the threads in the
rust and your
stud hole.
You'll see that as we're going in here. But backing this tap off when you're cycling this keeps you from running that debris back into the threads again. Can't see as much of it there. I'll try to keep my hands out of your way, guys. We also want to talk about punching into a water jacket here, Mike. When you're running the tap or a thread chaser in here, don't just keep cranking on it when you get to the bottom. If you get to a stopping point, don't keep cranking. You can definitely punch through a water jacket there, destroy your block, make for a bad day. All right, as I'm backing my thread chaser out here, trying to keep it straight on hole so I don't affect the lead through.
Oh man,
quite a bit.
Look at that.
Yeah, quite a bit there came out. I'm gonna back away so the camera can focus on it really well. So now, another thing Mike and I talked about, my old way, I would have grabbed this, went to another hole and kept right on going. What you want to do here, and I'm gonna let Adam kind of zoom out just a little bit, is what you want to do on your thread chaser is you want to just go ahead and clean it up. I just use a little bit of solvent here to clean it up. I'll hit it with compressed air to clean it on out, which, Mike and I moved this motor. We'll hit it with just a little bit of compressed air to dry it back off before we go to another hole. Then we'll re-lube and hit another hole. So all of these are done. One thing I don't like to do is I'll hit that hole after we've done this with compressed air. Watch your eyes here. I'll just kind of try to keep it from flying everywhere. If you want to put a rag down inside the motor, inside the cylinders to keep the debris out of it, that works fine too. Being too careful is not a bad thing. I'll hang my line back up there.
So I think when we just showed that, the example of that stuff in there, if you don't get that out, when you put the stud in, you're not going to get correct torque.
Correct.
You know, you're going to gall the thread down in the block. It's really a good idea to make sure everything is clean.
Yes.
Which, if I can interrupt for just a second,
absolutely.
There's a lot of people when they don't have a motor out and they've got a motor in their vehicle. You know, the guy looks at his truck and says, "I don't want to take the heads off of that."
Yes.
So they say, "Can I take one stud at one bolt out and put a stud in?"
Yes.
We have no problem with that. It's the best thing to do is do it this way, where you're doing all of them at the same time. But it's important to clean every hole.
Correct.
And tap it down, or chase it down, and clean those threads out.
Right.
Sometimes with a head on, that's a long reach down to get it cleaned out, but you got to make sure you use air at least to get that stuff out of there.
A lot of guys that have had a head gasket compromise as well will want to take a bolt out, drop a stud in one by one. We really don't recommend that. If you've already had a compromised head gasket or you've had a failure that time, it has to come off. Warpage has to be checked on. Run out has to be set up on it and cleaned up there. But
absolutely.
If a motor's fine and you just want to do this for performance base, take one out, put one in, that's okay. Just be very careful, mindful of your torques and mindful of getting your hole cleaned out. All right, Mikey, let's throw a stud in here. Talk a little bit about this kit, the Duramax kit from ARP. With this kit, you get all of the studs for the motor, nuts, and washers. Washers are very important. We're going to be talking a lot about that in this installation video. But you get these metric 8 or metric 10 upper row bolts. They actually come in this kit. One of our best-selling kits, the 6.0 kit, for you 4 Power Stroke guys, if you're watching this, your upper row bolts do not come in that kit. They're sold separately, but we've got those kitted together for you to be able to purchase, so we make that purchase easy. But for the Duramax motor, we get these 8 upper rows. So let's talk about, Mike, proper way to install the head. Do you like to set the head gasket and the head on and then put the studs in, or do you put the studs in?
No, I would put the studs on first.
Okay.
That's absolutely the best way. And that way it's a guide as you put it all down.
It's an alignment issue.
Right.
Correct. Inside of each ARP kit, you're going to get a packet of lube. What do you think, Mike? This pack of lube is probably enough lube to do the entire job.
Yes.
I think they've sized this out pretty well. It's engineered correctly.
I mean, we have other sizes if people are available. They're available as more packets, tubes, or containers. Yeah,
your shop size container here, which that's a 10-ounce container, and that'll last you quite a long time even if you're doing a number of builds here. So I'm just going to use it, and let's talk about the stud itself. So we want to lubricate the engine side of the stud.
Yes.
Yes. Into the block. Not tons of it.
Not a lot.
Just enough like that.
Yeah, and you should spread it out on the...
Run it across the threads there.
Yep.
Motors that have water jackets inside of these spout holes you wanted to talk on.
Yeah, I think it's an important thing that if you have that situation, we also make a PTFE, people call that Teflon sealer. It's a thread sealer that you put on there instead, and you run that down there, and that will seal the thread and the water from coming up the thread.
That's it. All right, so one of the most important part of this job, and people ask us this all the time, when you're installing your studs, do I tighten them down? What do you say there, Mike?
You hand tighten them.
Hand tighten them.
Yep. And that gets to what we said maybe a little earlier, is when we were talking about the thread chaser, is when you can't wrench it down hard, because we have no control over the castings.
Yes.
And they have what they call core shift in a lot of cast iron. That core shift could make thinner walls down in there, and if you go down real hard, you could crack through the bottom of that hole into water.
Yeah, so have to use a sealant in that instance. ARP studs have got an Allen head at the top of the bolt. So you can use a Allen wrench. This is not to tighten. This is just for ease of installation. With a T-handle, it makes it really, really nice. You can do it really fast. When I put mine in, I'll back it off just a little bit there, and then I'll sit it back down and just hand tight as far as I can.
When it stops,
exactly.
You stop.
The torque application on a stud is a little bit different than a bolt, Mike. You want to talk just a little bit about that. When you've got a bolt, you're actually pulling at the threads in the base of the block. It's different with a stud, correct?
Yeah, and there is no pulling of the stud bottom here. What you're doing is you're stretching this piece of the stud, which is what you want to use, because we talked earlier about it being like a spring, and all of the torque is done right here in the upper threads.
It's on the thread side. And you'll notice that the threads on these studs this is a fine thread, and then a coarse thread on your block side. So I'm going to put one more in the block here for you guys. We're not going to make you watch us put every one of these studs in. We wouldn't do that to you. So we're going to go ahead and run this one down, so give you another shot of us doing this. So I run it down, hit the bottom of my hole. I'll back it out just a fuzz, and then I'll come back and seat it again, just finger tight like that. And another thing, you can look at that visually. You can see the depth of these two studs. You can look at them and know if one of them's higher than the other, then it could be debris in that hole. Need to go back out, clean it out again.
Correct.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to take a little break here. We're going to go through, get our studs put in the motor, and then we'll come back to you and show you setting the gasket on. All right, we've got all of our head studs in the block on this Duramax motor. And I just think there's something really incredibly sexy about a motor with all the studs in it before we put the heads on it. I just got to bring that up. I told that to Mike. I just think that there is. But now, one thing to look for, we talked about the height of the studs through the motor. One good point that Mike brought up to look for is make sure that none of your studs, you can see threads above the block. If you can see threads above the block, then you're obviously the stud is not seated correctly. Pull it out, rechaste it. Yeah, check it. So, all right.
Something you did when we were off camera is you went in and cleaned everything here first.
Yes.
And especially after doing all of this stuff and chasing the threads and bringing debris out, you got to clean not just the head surface, the block surface, but down in the piston hole.
Yeah, piston hole, turn the motor through.
Yeah.
Bring the piston out to the bottommost part of its travel, clean each cylinder out, If you want to lube your cylinders, that's fine too. You know, compressed air through all of your coolant and oil passages. Just make sure everything is free and clean. This is the time to do it. Another thing that we don't talk about is enough, and depending on your motor orientation, is your lifters. Make sure that your lifters are in their bores correctly. Check the lifters. I like to take my light out, and I actually like to look inside on a V8 motor to look in the cups of my lifters and make sure that nothing is in there. You know, even though we keep the motor covered up, just make sure the cups of the lifters are free and they're good to go. They've got their guides in there, like on these Duramax motors. Make sure everything's right. Turn it all the way through a couple of cycles, make sure we're good. So let's talk basic engine orientation for just a second, Mike. If you're standing at the back of the motor like I am right now, the passenger side is right and the driver's side is the left. So we're going to do our right hand side or our passenger side gasket here. These are, I guess we can talk on them all for just a second. These are mall gaskets that we're going to be using, 54-580 for this installation. So I've got the correct gasket on these. For the Duramaxes, they're actually marked right and left on the gasket itself. We'll have an R there. And I'll walk back over to you, see your R there. So this is our gasket for our right hand side. One more visual check, make sure that our deck is clean. Saw a little spot there. Dry is another thing, and it tells you that in your ARP manual as well. You want to make sure this is a dry surface. So we're going to go ahead and slide our head gaskets over our studs. Make sure that you have your dowels in the block, our head alignment dowels. We've got both of those in there. I hadn't talked on that yet. And there we are. So try not to touch it now. We're ready to talk about head prep. Head prep same way as deck prep is for the block. You want to make sure that your surface of the head is clean. It has been checked. It has been trued up. Valve seats have been checked. Everything has been cleaned. Clean. You can tell that's the common thing that we talk about here is cleanliness, because once you sit the head on here, that's going to be the last time. So I'm going to just one more time check the deck of this head. Everything looks good. Mikey and I are going to sit this down on our block. On that side. Yep. And we're just going to ease it down. I think you need to come down just a fuzz, Mike. A little bit high. There we go.
There we go.
Got it. I'm going to go with mine. Actually, you know what? I'll tell you what. Let me switch spots here.
Go for it.
No. I think I saw it.
Come this way. I don't feel so bad now. Thanks, Wade.
Yeah, no problem.
You're always kind to visitors.
Anything for a friend. Okay. Made it down to the dowel. And you want to make sure that
there you are.
You rock the head, yeah. And once it seats, you'll know it.
I think it's good that it happened to you right there, because the guys that are viewing this, that same thing's going to happen to them. If they think it's already flat and try to tighten it down, it'll be a problem.
Absolutely. So we got our head on. It's, you want to make sure that everything's flat, that you're all the way down on the dowels. That's a big thing. If it's not on the locating dowels there, what'll happen is when you go to start tightening the head down, you'll crush the dowel, creel it over, and you won't get a good seal. In some cases, it will ruin the head. Okay, we've got the head on the block. We are going to go ahead and start putting our nuts on now. We're going to talk on the washers for just a second. Each of these head stud kits, almost all platforms have the washers that come with the stud kits, correct? Yep. Mike was talking to me about something this morning when we came in here. You have to lubricate the top side of the washer However, you don't want to lubricate the bottom side of the washer, the side that actually touches the head. And talk just a bit on that.
The problem with it is if you put lube on the top and bottom of this washer on this head, and you go to torque it down, you end up getting a double bearing.
Yeah.
And so as you're torquing, you never get into your torque value early enough, and it's just stretching and stretching that stud, and you could yield it.
Yeah. Okay.
So you need it situated onto the head,
right,
so it locks down.
Yep. That makes perfect sense. You don't have to lubricate the top side of it and try to figure that out. I was talking to Mike, I said, well, we can lay them down on board, and he said, no, we're going to show you that when we go to put our nuts on here. So that's what we're going to do here just right now. I'm just going to go through, I'm going to throw all the washers on real quick, and then we'll go ahead and we'll cut back to you when we're putting all of the nuts on. All right, now we're going to put the nuts on our studs. So you get 12-point nuts for the ARP studs. So how are we going to, we need lube on the top side of our ARP washer, and we also need to lube the shank of the stud itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to put just a little bit of lube on the nut here, and then we're going to go through and we're going to put just a little bit on the stud itself there. So what we were talking on there is no sense in trying to force the lube into here. Just put it on the nut. That will lubricate the washer itself, and then you've got some that's on this, that is on the stud itself. So I've got quite a few of these to do. I'll run these down hand tight, and then I'm going to do the rest of mine. So again, we're going to come back to you just as soon as we've got everything tightened there, and we will be ready for our first torque sequence. Well, the fun begins now. It's time to torque the head down. So we've got all of our nuts and washers on, everything lubricated. We wanted to talk, Mike wanted us to talk just a minute about instructions.
Instruction sheets, it's really important. You know, most all of us have done these kinds of things before, and guys aren't real good about using instructions to put things together. So I would tell you this is a really critical thing to make sure you follow the instructions the way they're printed. Read through it, understand what's here, and it'll give you your torque values here, but we also recommend you check our website. If there's an update to the instruction sheets, we have every instruction sheet for every product we make on our website. And you can source it there and look to confirm what it says on that sheet. In this case, on the 12 millimeters, it's 125 foot-pounds, and on the 8 millimeters, it's 25.
Yes. And we will do that in 3 equal steps. On the main studs, we're going to do 40, 80, and ending up at the 125 foot-pound sequence. You guys that have done head gaskets on Chevrolets, you know what kind of a joy this really, really is when the motor's in the truck. It's just an absolute pleasure to do this job, but you can't do it laying in bed, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and get started. After I get my final torque sequence on the studs done, then I'm going to put my upper row bolts on, and we'll torque those down. The pattern for this on some of them comes on the sheet, on the instruction sheet. It'll tell you the suggested torques, and then the pattern, of course, to tighten this in on some of the products. So Mike, we'll start out with 40 here. We're not going to show you all torquing all these nuts down. I want to hit one here and make sure your torque wrench is at the correct value. I think the first torque sequence is probably one of the most important, because that's when you really need to be looking for your head to the block. Make sure again that you didn't have, you know, something misaligned here, or you just want to make sure everything's coming together for you. We're going to work in a circular pattern, so start in the center. We're just going to continue to work out here on it. We'll do a few here and kind of show you what we're talking about when we're talking about in a circle pattern.
And while you're doing that, something I would like to remind guys is that when you get to the point where it either clicks for you or it makes a noise like his is making, you don't get to that point and then give it a little extra.
Yeah.
Do not do that.
Do not do that. I asked Mike when he was talking, I've read a couple of articles on torquing things down. A lot of people will do their first sequence and walk away from it. That's totally fine. You don't have to do that, but it's something that you can do. I've heard about guys and racing engine builders will torque a head down and they'll do a torque sequence and then walk away from it for 24 hours. They'll leave it for a day. So it takes them 3 days to do the sequence. But, you know, this is just fine. You know, as long as you're using the correct torque values, you're going to be fine. And when you start a sequence, try to finish it. That's when you don't remember where you left off and come back and start back on the wrong fastener. All right, well, that's 40, guys. Time to go for 80, and we'll come back once we've got all of these torqued. Our final torque sequence was 125 foot-pounds. We've got that done here. So 125 is not too awful bad. Again, with the motor out, let me just go back through and check it. We're good there. Now it's time to do our upper row bolts, which are metric 8. So let's talk about that for just a second here. You'll have those 4 bolts. And what we like to do here is we'll use just a little bit of lube on the thread of the bolt, which that's not a little bit. And then just a little bit on the underside of the head of the bolt for proper torque. So same thing on all these. I'll do that for you real quick. And then we will tighten these down on the Duramax to 25 foot-pounds. You can go right straight to 25 foot-pounds, right, Mike?
Yeah, I think I would do 2 pulls on that.
2 pulls.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll do a 10 and a 25 pull on these. And start in the middle, work our way out, same way we did the head studs. So we got our metric 8 upper bolts here. They are done, torqued down. Our head studs are done, torqued down. Now we've got the driver's side of the engine that we've got to do yet, but I'll do that off camera for us. But we wanted to talk to you just a little bit about heat torquing or heat cycle torquing. Mike's got some info for us on that. I was honestly always of the opinion, you know, take a truck, drive it, bring it back after 100 miles, retorque ahead. You can talk about that.
Yeah, it mechanically, when you're talking about the stud and the nut and all that, it isn't necessary because you get to your target clamp load. Mm-hmm. But depending upon the head gasket manufacturer, they may require you do that. You know, our part of the job is the mechanical compression.
Right.
And clamping of this.
The clamping load, yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, I mean, I would follow their recommendations to do that for sure.
A heat torque isn't necessarily going to change the stretch of the bolt. These fasteners are not going to back off per se.
No.
If you want to do a retorque after a few heat cycles, that's fine. Mechanically, we're saying not really necessary, which is probably a big relief to you guys like Duramaxes and
it's a real difficult deal.
It's a real difficult deal. In closing, I wanted to talk about ARP as a company. You know, we said in the beginning of this video, we've been an ARP customer for a long time. You know, tell us a little bit about ARP, Mike. Well,
ARP was started by a man named Gary Holzapfel. And he had been doing some work as a job shop in the aerospace industry, and he had racers coming to him asking for his help with different things on their engines, and he loved to solve problems, and they had problems, and it got to be to the point where he said, wow, this is something I really like, and he started getting involved in it. And you know, all these years later, it's still a family operation. There's Gary, who founded the company, Mike, his son, who's president of the company, who's every day running production and elbow deep in machines. I mean, he's invested in what he's doing physically, mentally, everything. And then his son, Ryan, the grandson, is involved in working machines and learning the business also.
That's awesome.
And it's treated like family throughout. We've got generations of families working for us in the machining operations.
Yeah.
So it's a really cool company to be involved with. It's in Ventura, California. We have machining operations in Santa Paula, which is a few miles away. And we're an hour and a half, 2 hours, depends on traffic, north of Los Angeles.
Well, at least we're not in LA.
We're not in LA, yeah, thankfully.
Yeah.
But we're very committed to doing the finest fasteners we can in the world.
Right.
And we do stuff all the way from like a diesel like this, all the way to being on the Falcon 9 rockets going up in space.
Yeah.
You know, we do a lot of very special fasteners for a lot of people. But this is really our main core business,
right,
is head studs and bolts and fasteners in the automotive style engines.
Yeah, your everyday driver stuff.
Yep.
Well, they make a fine product, and we're very proud to carry them here at Thoroughbred Diesel. Like I said, again, I'm proud to call Mike my friend. If you see Mike out at one of the shows or something, go up and talk to him.
Thanks, brother.
Really easy to talk to, good guy, love to talk to you. Yeah, if you have a question about ARP, any fasteners, anything related to engine building, give us a call. We'll be glad to help you, or hit us in the comments there. Another thing I wanted to say before we close this out, remember, we're talking today about torque sequences and torque values for a Duramax motor. This doesn't apply to every engine out there. Make sure that you read your instructions, use those torque values from there. So, got a question, give us a call. Thank you for watching, and thank you again,
Thanks,
Mike,
Wade.
for coming down. Appreciate
it was awesome.
Thanks.